how do you get the youth involved in the election process or just politics in general in such a polarized political environment today?
So that's a great question, Jaden. I don't think of it as a problem so much of polarization as I do that our side, at least, needs to connect up both with what's wrong in a concrete and visible way that matter to young people, and that we really are committed to make change, not just blah, blah, blah about it for an extended period. So let me just give you a couple of examples around that. There's $1.5 trillion of student loan debt outstanding. Think about that. This one for me is deeply personal. I was that kid who wanted to be a public school teacher. My chance was a commuter college that cost $50 a semester. I could get a 4-year diploma and catapult it into America's middle class at a cost that I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job. Now, that didn't happen by magic. It happened because America invested in schools and said, hey, kid, you're willing to work hard? Then come on down. We want you to get your education. We want you to get your technical training. We want you to get what you can get. Come on down and do this. That didn't happen for your generation. People have said college, more important than ever, post-high school training, more important than ever, and good luck to you, you're on your own. Your federal government said to you, we'll lend you the money for it and then charge you high interest rates and fees. And by the way, for the rest of you, I just want you to know this, $1.5 trillion in student loan debt. Again, talking about the urgency of the problem, think about it this way. So here's this giant bowl of debt. Every year, few people enter college, few people graduate from college, and a few people finish paying off their debts. If college population is staying about the same, which it is, you would expect the ball of debt would say about the same size, right? Some paying off, some coming in. The ball of student loan debt is growing right now at the rate of $100 billion a year. And you know why? High interest, fees, kids who can't pay and are in default and getting smacked around on it, and student loan debt. By and large, can't be discharged in bankruptcy. There are people whose Social Security checks are being garnished to pay student loans. Sometimes because they co-signed for a grandchild who can't pay. Sometimes because they went back to school later in life trying to upgrade their skills and weren't able to pay. So there's one just right off the top. It's all about the decisions being made in Washington. And those decisions touch you. And they touch your friends, and they touch the next kids younger than you and the ones a little bit older. So here's my pitch, part one. We got to talk about the issues that matter. Student loans, climate change, right? Childcare before too long. Housing costs, I've got a great bill on this if anyone wants to ask me about it, hint, hint. And then the second part is we got to organize. Face-to-face, person-to-person. We reach out and talk to people about why these issues matter individually to us and why we hope they matter to you. I think that's how we get people to the polls. I think that's how we win the election, but I always want to add this part. And that's how we build the movement that will put us in a position to make the changes right after we win those elections. So thank you. It's a great question. Thank you, Jaden.
My name's Jane. And
Hi, Jane.
Hi. My question is, I recently heard that less than 50% of Iowans get employer-based health insurance. So could you just clarify what your position is on, on expanding health care to more people?
Absolutely. So thank you. Let me do this, if I can, a little bit in steps, but it starts with our values. Healthcare is a basic human right, and we fight for basic human rights. That's it. Illnesses and accidents are hard enough to deal with. Nobody should go bankrupt over trying to pay for it and have to worry about getting access. So everything I have to say about this is about how we get to that place where everybody gets covered. And let me start with part one. We cannot let down our guard against the current administration. Remember, there is a lawsuit pending right now in Texas in which this administration is working hard to do what they couldn't do in a vote in Congress, and that is just to repeal the Affordable Care Act. All of the protections around people with pre-existing conditions, all the pieces that were put in, just repeal it. In addition, over to HHS, they're just doing everything they can to knock the legs out, reduce the number of people who can get signed up, ease up on what insurance companies have to do, open the door to let insurance companies trick people, cheat people. So number one, we got to defend what we got. Number two, we need to make some quick changes that we know we can make. First one is bring down the cost of prescription drugs. This is just nuts. I'll give you 3 quick ways that we can do that. We should permit the importation of drugs from Canada when it's the same drug. You bet. We should permit importation from Europe when it's the same drug. They've met the safety standards.
Hello, Senator.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Tom Brooks,
Hi, Tom.
General Manager of Western Dubuque Biodiesel. I employ 24 employees in the biodiesel sector.
Yep.
I serve as the chairman for the Iowa Biodiesel Board and on the national board representing over 500,000 green-collar jobs. So
I like that.
So I'm here to ask, what can you do to help us enforce the laws that are on the books that aren't being enforced? Secretary Pruitt undermined our industries last year and gave away small refinery waivers. We have a new secretary, potentially Wheeler, who looks to maybe doing the same.
Yeah.
These small refinery waivers are killing the biofuels industry, the farmers in Iowa that grow grains such as corn and beans.
Yes.
So what can you help us with as far as getting the laws and rules back on track?
Okay, good. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate the question. So let me just start by saying I support the fuel efficiency standards. This is critically important because there have been attacks on the fuel efficiency standards. I support biodiesel as a part of how we're going to meet those fuel efficiency standards. But you, of course, Tom, have gone right to the heart of the question. And that is, right now, the waivers are being handed out. Oh, and who gets the waivers? The guys who have connections, the big guys, right? Isn't there some talk about Wilbur Ross having gotten waivers for one of his outfits? Yes, that was a grim yes over there. But that's the problem we've got. You know, we write some basic rules that pretty much support what I think most of America wants to see. And then along comes an administration that puts someone in charge of the Environmental Protection Agency who's at 100% loggerheads on the goal of the agency. Pruitt finally was ushered out the door under the mounting scandals. But he was, yes, let's do a little, we have to, that's good. That's a good thing. But now he's been replaced by a coal lobbyist. This is just a stunner. It's like, you couldn't make this up in a bad movie, right? Oh, we're going to put in charge of the EPA. Somebody who lobbies for the other team, right? We watched this on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, right? First thing that guy comes in and he does, the Consumer Bureau, there to make sure people don't get cheated on mortgages, credit cards. He wants to change the mission statement to say, and let's help the big banks. Wait, they were already doing okay in this. The whole problem is to get it back. So here's the deal. Here's what I can tell you. We use the tools we've got available to us, Tom. I've spoken about this publicly. I will continue to speak about it publicly. I'll speak about it from the floor of the Senate. We'll keep pushing as hard as we can. You should speak up. You should get in it. We still have our voices. That's the one thing they can't take away from us at this point. But, yeah, they try. But 2020 is what it's got to be about. And this is one more reminder that in 2020, we need a president, we need a Congress, We need a state government that isn't there for the wealthy and the well-connected, but is there for everyone else.
So, what parts of the world would you focus on the most, and what would your strategy be?
So it's a good question, Jackie. The question is, what part of the world would you focus on the most? You know, let me start with on this, Jackie, because I think it matters. I think we need to figure out where our presence is not helping. And I'm going to start here with Afghanistan. We're in our 17th year. And I was in Afghanistan a year ago last summer with John McCain. I think it was John's last trip overseas to be with the troops. And we were there over the 4th of July. And what really hit me while we were there is the more questions you kept asking. That at that point, our 16th year, and the Afghan government had control over less than 60% of the land. It didn't have the support of the people. There was a serious problem with corruption. The heroin trade was bigger than ever. There were now multiple groups all around Afghanistan that were terrorist groups and supported by outsiders, and the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan is porous, letting terrorists run back and forth, letting drug traders run back and forth. In other words, just not working. And what struck me about this was two things. The first, we all have an interest in fighting against terrorism. We all do. And when I say we, I don't just mean America. I mean all the countries of the world, the rest of the world. The idea that this is somehow America's unique obligation to be there, I think is wrong. There's a reason we have allies. And there's a reason we try to tell the difference between our allies and our enemies. We need to treat problems in areas like Afghanistan as a problem for the world community to deal with. And it's great to take a leadership position, but it's all of us working together. And this is why it's important that we build up our relationships with our allies. The second thing I want to say, though, that I think is important about several places where Americans are deployed around the world now. I sit on the Senate Armed Services Committee. As I mentioned earlier, all three of my brothers served in the military, and the military will do anything we ask them to do. God bless them. They literally put their lives on the line for all of us. But that means that before we ask them to do that, we make darn sure that first, the kind of problem that we're starting to get into is a problem that's going to be solved militarily rather than with economic or diplomatic tools or working more with our allies. And part two is before we go in, we better have some vision of how it is we're going to get out on the other side. Endless war is not a strategy. So I hope that's helpful.